We're going to start today with a little trivia question, trivia contest. One question, and I would love to get some responses. If you had to guess, what is the height of the tallest person in modern history? What's the height of the tallest person in modern history? Any guesses? 9 foot, 8'3". I hear an 8'2", 8'2", 17, 5'5". Oh, okay, 5'8". Not you, Phil. Sorry, it's not you. The tallest person in modern history. We have a picture of him, I think. His name is Robert Wadlow. He lived in Alton, Illinois, and he was 8 feet 11 inches tall. He is standing beside, this picture is him standing beside his dad. His dad is about just a shade under 6 foot. I'm about 6'2", so add 3 feet to me, roughly. And that's Robert Wadlow. He had a condition, his pituitary gland didn't work right. And his body produced way too much HGH. If you're a sports fan, you may have heard of that. It's a human growth hormone, something your body naturally produces. His produced it and just kept on producing and kept on producing. And he kept growing and growing and growing. 5.5 feet tall in kindergarten. This tall in kindergarten. It took them until he was 12 to figure out what was wrong with him and diagnose it. And I'm like, how could it take him so long to figure that out? But it just did. Robert Wadlow never stopped growing. We're going to come back to him in just a minute. You can take his picture down. Our sermon series that we're going through right now is called Becoming. And we are going through the values that our church thinks of as important, that are things that will help you to be like Jesus, to become his passionate followers. And so we're asking the question this 3 or 4 weeks, what does it look like to become more like Jesus? In other words, how do I get from where I am right now to looking more like what Jesus looked like when he lived on this earth? And many years ago, our church decided that we would have 4 values, 4 things that would help you to get from here to there. We believe that if you are connecting in different ways, if you're growing, if you're serving, and if you're going, if you do those kinds of things, you're going to look more like Jesus. And so like Phil said, we talked last week about connecting. If you are connecting with God in a regular fashion, right? You're reading his word, you're hearing from him, you're talking to him, you're engaging with him, you're listening to him. If you're doing that, it's kind of a horizontal thing, right? Because I'm down here, he's way up there. We're doing this horizontal connection that we got going on. And at the same time, we want to have this, that was vertical is what I mean, that's vertical. We also want to have a horizontal connection going on between people, because we're not doing this alone. There's no Lone Rangers, right? We're doing this thing together. Connecting is a big deal. Today, we're going to talk about our second value. That value is growing. And what does that mean? What do we mean by that as a church? What does it look like to grow as a believer, as a follower of Jesus? What does it look like to grow as a lover of God in your life? And how do we define what it means to grow? Physically speaking, I come back to Robert Wadlow again. When we think about it from his perspective, it becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly that healthy growth is not primarily about getting bigger, right? Healthy growth is not primarily about getting big. That's part of it, but that's not all there is to it, and it's maybe not even the most important part. Healthy growth is about fulfilling your purpose. Healthy growth is about fulfilling your purpose. If growth was primarily about getting bigger, then Robert Wadlow would be maybe one of the greatest men who ever lived, right? If growing and the most important thing about it is getting bigger, Robert Wadlow, he's giant. But most of us don't even know his name. Never even ever heard of him. He's not the greatest of all time. In fact, Robert Wadlow was killed by a blister. He was killed by a blister. He got so tall that he couldn't feel his legs. He couldn't feel his feet. And so he had to wear braces on both legs to allow him to walk. And one day, one of those braces rubbed a blister on his ankle, and he couldn't feel it. And he got infected. And then it went septic, and he died. Boom, 22 years old. If getting bigger was a sign the only sign of healthy growth, then, it didn't work in his case, all right? His body failed to fulfill its purpose. Healthy growth is an important thing in our life, but not all growth is healthy growth, which is the opposite of what the world says. You think about the world says, and Neil talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I keep going back to it over and over because it's such a great point. All sorts of things grow and get bigger and get better. And you think about plants and animals and people and economies and finances and all kinds of things. And the world says that kind of growth where things are always getting bigger and bigger and better and more important or richer or more visible or more influential or more productive, that kind of growth, bigger, is always better is what the world says. But you and I know that that's not always true. It's not always true because there are things that grow in your shower called mildew, right? And there are cracks in your windshield, and there's cracks in your driveway, and if those things keep growing, it's not that great of a deal, right? There are all kinds of things that grow, and there's tumors that show up, and they grow, and it's not always a good thing. You say, Nate, those are all negative things. You're right, but think of all the celebrities who have grown up having dreams, and they've made it big, right? They've accomplished everything that their dream, everything that they could ever desire in their life. They got it. They got money, and they got fame, and they got influence, and they got this platform. They got everything that they ever wanted. Where'd they end up? 6 months of rehab. So many times it happens. Why? Because healthy growth doesn't always mean that bigger is better. It can be destructive. And healthy growth starts with fulfilling your purpose. Think about empty nesters. The last kid moves out of the house, okay? 20 years old, 25, 35, whatever, however old they are. They finally move out, right? And what do some empty nesters do once that happens? Some of them, not all of them, but some of them choose to downsize, right? I don't need as much space as I needed before. I don't need this many bedrooms. I don't want to clean this many bathrooms. And so they go to a smaller house. They go to, an apartment or a condo. They downsize. Would any of us look at that couple, that husband and wife, and say that they are failing? No, you wouldn't say that, right? You would say that they're fulfilling their purpose. They are matching up their life stage with their lifestyle, with who they are at any given moment, at this particular moment when their kids have all left the place. So they don't need all that space anymore. It's a good thing for them to have less bathrooms to have to clean and less yard to have to mow and less things to maintain. We'd never accuse them of failing or taking a step backward. We would say that they're progressing, right? They're moving forward. They've got a good thing going on. That's what healthy growth is primarily about. It's about fulfilling your purpose. What does it mean to do that spiritually? All right? What does it mean to do that spiritually? There's a story that Matthew records about a tree. Okay? It's in Matthew chapter 21. If you want to look it up, you can. We're just going to be there for a minute. Matthew chapter, there's this tree that Jesus has this little encounter with. It's at the end of his life. It's actually the last week, the last week of his life before he's crucified, right? And he's in Jerusalem, and he's spending time there and kind of coming in. And he would go in during the day into town. He would teach and he'd preach, and he's rebuking and cleaning off tables in the temple, doing all kinds of stuff. But then at night, he would come out of the city and go stay somewhere else. And that's where this little piece of Matthew chapter 21 happens, verse 18. And one morning, here's what Matthew says. He says, early in the morning, as Jesus was on his way back to the city, this early in the morning, he was hungry. Mark says, he records the same story, and Mark says that Jesus, when he went out the night before, he went to a town called Bethany, okay, to stay there for the night. And that's where he's coming. He's coming from Bethany. It's about 2 miles away. We don't know for sure, but we can guess that Jesus probably stayed with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. That's where they were from. Lazarus, who he raised from the dead, Mary, Martha, some of his best friends, probably stayed at their house, would be my guess. And I'm thinking, it says early in the morning. My guess is he gets up before breakfast is served. It's the picture that I got in my mind. It's early in the morning. It's about this 2-mile walk back to Jerusalem, and Jesus is hungry. He hadn't had anything to eat. Okay? Verse 19. Seeing a fig tree by the road, he went up to it. Why? Because he was hoping to get something to eat. Mark telling the same story. Mark mentions that Jesus saw this tree from a long way off. He saw it a long distance away, and he saw that it had leaves from a long way off. And that's why he went up to it, because he was hungry. It's early spring, and so the fact that this tree is in leaf is unique a little bit because it's so early in spring, but it happens sometimes. And when that happens sometimes, guess what can sometimes come out? Figs on the tree in early spring. And that's what Jesus is hoping for here. Seeing a fig tree by the road, he went up to it, but found nothing on it except leaves. From a long way away, the tree looked healthy. It's got leaves on it. It looks like it's growing, right? It looks like a good thing. But when he gets up close, there's nothing there. So look at what Jesus does. He curses it. Then he said to it, "May you never bear fruit again." And immediately the tree withered. Now, Matthew and Mark, they record this story for a particular reason, okay? They record this story, I think, to say something about the nation of Israel, the people that Jesus is going into Jerusalem to talk to. Because the people of Israel have been given tons of blessings, all kinds of incredible things that have been given to them as a nation, right? They were chosen out of all the nations of the earth. They got the temple, they got the sacrifices, they got all kinds of things that God has given to them, and yet they missed it, right? They failed to produce the way that they were supposed to be producing. They record this story because of what Israel was doing, but I think that the principle is similar for me as an individual, for you as an individual, and for us as a church body. This fig tree looked like it was growing on the outside. It looked like it was healthy. There were leaves. It was green. It was, kind of fluffing out. It stood out, caught the eye of Jesus from a long way away. But up close, he gets there. There's no fruit. The issue wasn't the size of the tree. It's not the condition of the tree. The issue was its purpose. What was the purpose of the fig tree? To produce figs. Jesus didn't judge it because it was too small or too unimportant. He cursed it because it was barren. It looked alive, but it wasn't doing what it was made to do, what it was meant to do, what its purpose was. And that's what healthy growth is about as a follower of Jesus. 2, what does that mean for us to grow? What does it look like for us to grow? The New Testament, the second part of the Bible, the part from Jesus on, okay, the New Testament uses basically, multiple words, but the two main words that it uses for grow cover two different dimensions of our lives. And let me explain what both of those are real quickly, and then we'll talk about them. The first word that Paul uses in the New Testament most often to describe individual Christians and the church, we go back to Ephesians 4. We talked about Ephesians 4 last week. And Paul writes this. He says to these Ephesian Christians, he says, "Instead, speaking the truth in love, we as Christians will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ." And he does the same thing in Colossians. He uses the word grow again to describe how the church, the body of Jesus, grows. There's something that's happening inside of the church, inside of the body. It grows through the connection that we have to the head, Jesus. Here's the thing that word means in these cases when Paul uses it in those cases. It's a word that's used of plants or animals, things that are alive. Okay, so we're not talking about economies. We're not talking about things that are dead. We're talking about things that are alive. And the word grow in this case means things like this. It means to increase. It means to become greater. And I know what those sound like. Those sound like visible, physical things, but they're not. The word means organic growth. The word means something that's changing inside of you as a person. okay? It assumes that something is alive. It's your cells that are multiplying inside of you, and they're regenerating. One dies off, and a new one comes in to take its place. You've maybe heard that the human body regenerates itself every 7 years. Maybe you heard that before. It's a myth. I looked this up. It's a myth. It's not true. Your body doesn't do that. Lots of your body does regenerate and turn itself over, but there are some things that don't. Your brain cells, for the most part, don't regenerate. Your heart doesn't regenerate. Your eyes don't regenerate, right? But that's the kind of growth that the rest of your body is doing. All the cells in my hands, in my skin, in my everywhere else, those things are being sloughed off all the time. But new ones are being made. That's the word that Paul's talking about when he says he wants the body, he wants us to grow. Something on the inside. It's internal, okay? And it's a progressive kind of a thing. It's not all at once. I wish it was. I wish it was all at once, that it would happen just like that, but it's not. It's a progressive thing that takes a long time. It's something that continues to go on until what? Until the plant has reached its purpose, until the animal has reached its purpose, until the person has reached its ultimate goal. And so that's one kind, all right? That's one kind. You got this picture of growth as being this internal regeneration thing that's happening inside of a person, but that's not the whole picture. The other word that the New Testament that Paul uses for growth is kind of the other side of the coin. And if this first word is like organic growth, something that happens on the inside, this other word is kind of that outward idea that we started with today. We're talking about Robert Wadlow and talking about how things appear to be sometimes to be growing outside. And Paul does care about that too. He uses it in 1 Thessalonians chapter 3. He says to the people of Thessalonica, "May the Lord make your love increase." That's the word. It's grow. May the Lord make your love grow and increase and overflow for each other and for everyone else, just as ours does for you. And you might think, well, that sounds kind of internal. That sounds kind of... But remember, what's love in the New Testament? Is it an emotion? Not primarily. I mean, emotions are involved. But in the New Testament, what's love? Love is a verb. Love is an action. And what do verbs have? They have results. They have consequences. They have things that you can see. Once you've loved, there's results and consequences and things that you can see have happened before that. And here's what that word love means that Paul is using. It means things like to overflow, to abound, to multiply, to become more and more. Those sound like what you picture in your head? It's not internal imagery like the first one. It's expansion kind of imagery, expanding kinds of pictures. It's more about the visible increase that we talked about earlier. So if the first word for growing is like a tree that's alive and flourishing and growing, it's got xylem and phloem that's working inside of it, right? And it's moving water up and down. It's making the trees, making the leaves come out. It's making the roots underground go out and spread out, and they're pulling in all the water that they can, right? That's the first kind of growing. And then the second part, the second kind of growing, is the fact that it's actually producing something, right? It's producing fruit. It's producing seeds, and those seeds are going to drop on the ground. What are they going to do? They're going to start growing up in that internal way, and then they'll, in theory, do the same thing. They'll begin to multiply and overflow and abound. The first kind of growing is your internal life, and the second kind that the New Testament pictures is this outward overflow. To my knowledge, as far as I can tell, the New Testament never pictures Christians as being static or settled or plateaued. It never pictures Christians like some kind of a stone pillar set in the ground. There are rocks in our faith that we can depend on, okay? But we're not that. It pictures us as something that's growing, like trees, rooted, increasing, cells going, regenerating, multiplying, overflowing with good fruit. Never pictures us like a rock, just there. It pictures us as movement. The goal, and we go back to Ephesians 4:13 again, and Paul says, the goal is that we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. The goal for you and the goal for me as followers of Jesus is Christ likeness. And if we aren't becoming more like him in our everyday life, then we aren't growing. God's patient with slow growth. He's okay with that. But he's not okay with plateauing. He's not okay with us just staying where we are as individuals and as a church. Okay? Let me make this personal for just a minute. And in my mind, making it personal always starts with self-evaluation. It means looking at my own life. And I would challenge you in the next few minutes to think about your own life and where you are in relation to growing. It's easy to talk about growth and have it be theoretical, right? Just head knowledge. It's trickier to talk about it in terms of looking in the mirror. So I want to ask you to look in the mirror today. Your own life, your relationship with God, your relationship with the church, how things are in your life on the inside and on the outside. The question isn't whether you attend church. It's not. It's important, but that's not the question. The real question is, am I actually growing? Not just busy or informed or involved, but am I actually growing? Is there something changing in me and on the outside of me that's becoming more like Jesus? And that deserves a moment for you to mull over. Okay? So I'm going to give you a moment to do that today. A lot of us go to the doctor once a year for a well visit. Right? You feel fine. Everything seems to be functioning okay. You're going to work. You play with your kids. You play with your grandkids. You shovel the snow. You mow the lawn. Everything's okay, but you still go to the doctor once a year for that well visit, right? What do you do? What does the doctor do when you get there? The doctor runs tests. The doctor checks on you. The doctor checks your blood pressure. The doctor may have had you do blood work ahead of time. The doctor, checks your cholesterol. Does all. Why does he do those things, or why does she do those things? They check those things because most of the time, most kinds of decline that we have in our body are gradual, right? They're gradual. And so the doctor, they want to check those numbers to see what the trend is, whether they're kind of going up or are they going down or are they staying steady. Most kinds of decline just kind of creep up on us. Most of the time, you don't wake up in the morning and say, man, I have lost it overnight. That's not how it works, right? Unless you ever had gout. If you ever had gout, that's overnight. I mean, that's an instantaneous thing. You'd be dying the next day, okay? But most of the time, any decline that you and I have is very gradual and invisible. And I hope that these questions I'm going to ask you in a moment will serve as a spiritual physical for you. That's a weird thing to say, right? A spiritual physical, a spiritual well visit for you to kind of examine your life. Not to shame you or scare you, but kind of just check your vitals. So let me ask you these questions. You may want to close your eyes for a moment. Just don't fall asleep. But just think about your own life as I ask these questions and answer them honestly. In what areas of my life am I growing up internally? What areas am I growing up? Am I learning? Is my heart, my inside, my soul being shaped by God's truth? Is there an area in my life where I'm being corrected by God or by His followers around me? Are my attitudes and my desires, my priorities being refined? If nothing in my life is ever being corrected or stretched or challenged on the outside, that isn't maturing. That's not growing. That's just kind of maintenance, just kind of maintaining. And then the other side. In what areas of my life am I growing out? In what areas of my life am I producing fruit? Is my love increasing? Is my patience increasing? Is my generosity expanding? If somebody came up to you and compared you today to you 5 years ago, what would they say about you? Would they say that you're more full of grace now than you were then? It's good questions to ask yourself. Put your head up if you had them down. Spiritual growth doesn't happen accidentally. It happens intentionally. Think about your retirement account. Hopefully you have one, maybe small, maybe big. I don't know where your mine's, smallish. Think about your retirement account. Nobody wakes up at 65 or 67 or 70 years old with a retirement account that is healthy by accident. That never happens. It never happens by accident. Unless you got like this long lost rich uncle or something that, helped you out. And if you do, then I'm going to talk to you. But what do you do? What do you do to get an IRA or a retirement account that is in a healthy position by the time you retire? What do? You make small, regular deposits. Week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. And what do those small, little deposits do? What do? They stack. And they start to compound and start to compound. And by the time you're 70 or 80 or whatever it is, hopefully those things have built up into a healthy position financially. Spiritual maturity works that same way. Nobody drifts into it. You don't drift into maturity. You don't drift into Christ-likeness by accident. We do it. We get there on purpose. We get there by being intentional. We get there by spending time in the Word. We get there by praying. We get there by choosing patience instead of irritation. Just like finances, if you stop contributing to your IRA, if you stop contributing to whatever your retirement thing is, you may not notice the impact right away. You ever had that happen? I know that we've had times where we had to stop at different moments of our lives because we just didn't have the money to put in for whatever reason. You don't notice right away in the bottom line number of that IRA account. You don't notice it immediately. But over time, you will. If you stop making those deposits, if you don't keep doing those regularly. And it's possible that some of us, and I put myself in this category too, okay? It's possible that some of us aren't necessarily in crisis spiritually, but maybe just kind of coasting, right? You know what I'm talking about? You've been making deposits, and then you just stopped and just kind of doing that. It's possible for that to happen. God's patient with slow growth, all right? But He isn't satisfied with permanent stagnation for us as individuals spiritually. The Bible never envisions a Christian who gets stuck at like year 3 or 4 or 5 and is like that for the next 50 years. The Bible never envisions any Christians who are like that. And so are there places in your life where you have gotten comfortable or content, or you feel like you stopped stretching in your spiritual life? Maybe not because you're rebellious, right? I'm not. But maybe because you're kind of settled. It's a good question to ask yourself. The encouraging part, and I hope this is encouraging to you, is that growing, or if you're kind of stuck like that, you're kind of settled, you're just kind of coasting, it doesn't require something dramatic to overhaul it. It doesn't require a giant change. Sometimes it just requires better positioning. My wife, Jenny Mern, is a gardener. She's an excellent gardener. She plants flowers all around the outside of our house, and they look fantastic. Okay, some of the stuff that's out there was there before we even moved in, but she takes care of it and does a fantastic job. Over the years, Jenny has noticed that some of those plants around our house just haven't flourished. She waters it, she fertilizes it, she treats it well, she goes out and sings to it, she plays music. She doesn't do that, but she takes care of them, right? And yet they still don't grow very well. They're limp, or they're scraggly or thin, or they get like plant rust on them, and they just don't look right. It's not blooming like she thought they would. And so what does she do? She hops online And she reads about that plant, and what does she find out? Well, you should try moving that plant. It needs more sun, or maybe it needs less sun. And so what does she do? She hassles me for 3 or 4 weeks to go out and dig this plant up, and after a month or so, she gets tired of me not doing it, and she goes out herself and digs up the plant. This is a true story, unfortunately. I'm a terrible assistant gardener. She'll take that plant and she'll move it, maybe just a few feet, or maybe she'll move it around the corner of the house, or sometimes to the other side of the house, and then she'll do the same stuff. She'll water it, fertilize it, take care of it, do everything that it needs. And what happens to that plant? It's the same plant. It's the same kind of soil. It's just a little bit of a different location. It's just a different exposure. What happens to it a month later? 6 weeks later, it's green, it's blooming, it's putting out these beautiful flowers. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Spiritual growth can work like that at times. And if you're one of these who is kind of stuck on this, you feel like you've kind of flattened out, spiritual growth can work like that. You can't force fruit to come out. Your spiritual leaders can't force it to come out. I can't force it to come out of you. What can you do? You can change your exposure. You can put yourself in a place where there's more light, where there's more truth, there's more encouragement for you, there's more accountability for you. Sometimes the difference between stagnation and growth isn't how hard you try. It's about kind of where you are planted at the moment. And that, right there, I think, is why life groups matter. That's why I think mentoring matters. That's why I think being mentored matters. Not because we need to fill up your calendars. I know you don't need that. And not because, the church needs to add new programs. A life group and mentoring and being mentored creates environments for growth. They create a place where you can, your roots can go deeper. They create a place where you can bash up against each other and figure it out. They create ways for us to become more like Jesus. Life groups aren't about adding another night out in your life. They're about putting yourself in soil where somebody knows your name, where somebody knows what you're going through, where somebody knows that you screwed up last week, and they're there to encourage you that it's going to be okay, and you'll get it next time, and we're in this together, and there's forgiveness, and there's hope, and there's peace, and you can be cheered on. We're a small church, but we got groups that you can be a part of for all ages and sizes that can help you grow up on the inside and to grow out. Are you part of a life group? And you hear the term mentor, and mentor is it's a word that scares people. It scares people because, I can never do that. I don't have anything to offer. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough, right? That's for people who are better than me. Listen, mentoring is not elite Christianity. It's normal Christianity. It's normal for us to be able to do that. Given an hour a week, just the simplest example, given an hour a week to a kid at Pinewood Elementary, it makes all the difference to that kid. And you don't have to be a genius. If I can do it, this introvert can do it, then anybody can do it. Can give that kid an hour a week that changes potentially the entire trajectory of their life. And finding somebody from our church or somebody in your neighborhood or the rest of your circle of friends who's a little bit ahead of you in the journey, who's a little more like Jesus than you are today, ask them out for coffee, ask them out for a walk, ask them to, meet with you once a month or a couple times a year, 4 or 5 times a year. That's not elite. That's normal. That's normal. It needs to be normal. And you don't need a new church program to grow. And we don't need to create something new at the moment for you to grow. You need a decision to pursue maturity. And I do too, okay? This is not it's us, right? Think about marriage. Nobody wakes up, anybody who's been married for a while, 20 or 30 or 40 years, you know that if you don't continually tend that marriage, if you don't continually take care of it, you don't continually invest in it, It's not going to blow up overnight if you slow down that tending of your marriage. You don't wake up one morning and hate your spouse all of a sudden. It doesn't happen like that. How does a marriage go downhill? It goes downhill always gradually. It's always gradually. And the same thing is true spiritually. If your love for people isn't increasing, if your patience isn't deepening, if your generosity isn't expanding, then that means that something is cooling down. And that brings us back to the fig tree. From a distance, Jesus is standing there. He's looking off in the distance. From a distance, it looks healthy. Looks like it's got leaves everywhere. Caught his eye, but he got up close. There was nothing. Jesus didn't curse the thing because it was small. He cursed it because it was barren. And so let me ask you this question. If Jesus was to walk up to your life today, what would he see? What would he see? Would he find leaves? And would he find roots growing out and evidence that there's something good going on in here, right? That the water's moving up and down, the nutrients are flowing the way that, would he find evidence of that if he walked up to you? Would he find evidence of fruit in your life that's multiplying and expanding and becoming more and more abundant? Evidence of love and repentance and all kinds, and Christ inside of you. Is that what he would find? If your answer feels, I'm not sure. If it feels, I don't know. If it feels shaky, that's not the end of the world. But it is an invitation to you to be involved somewhere, to be involved in a group, to be mentored, to be sharing the knowledge that you've gained in your 20 or 30 or 50 years of following Jesus with somebody who is a little bit behind you. I would just encourage you that growth means making small deposits regularly into your relationship with God and your relationship with other people. Healthy growth is about becoming who you and I are meant to be by God. The body of Christ, mature, built up. I pray that for you. I pray it for me. Let me do it out loud for you. God, it's been a year, God. And I know that not just for myself, but there's other people in here who it's been a year for. Because it was tumors, or it was that relationship that went south, or it was disconnection with somebody. God, it's been a year. And God, we know and we trust that you are a God who's bigger than whatever our year's been. God, you're a God who's bigger than the evils of this world. You're a God who's bigger than the political arguments. And you're a God who's bigger than my mistakes and the mistakes of my friends. God, you're bigger than our sin. You're bigger than the forces of this world. You're bigger than the spiritual forces of this world. Lord, I pray that you would help us to put ourselves into positions where we can grow the way you mean for us to grow, in a way that fulfills the purpose you have for us. God, help us to be changed on the inside continually. God, may our spirit and our soul be constantly becoming more like Jesus, so that when that day comes, that you'll be able to look at us and know that we are his brother, we are his sister, Jesus's, because we look so much like him. God, I pray for the fruit of our lives. God, I pray for the women and men who are going into schools this week to teach or to mentor, and people who are going into offices. And we got people who are going into factories, God. We got people who are going into libraries and into grocery stores. And we're spreading out all over 30 or 50 or 100-mile radius over the next week, God. And I pray that you'll help us to be people who it's obvious that we are growing in you. It's obvious that we are alive on the inside. And it's obvious because there's fruit in our life on the outside. God, help us to be that kind of people. Help me to be that kind of a person. Lord, I thank you for our church. I thank you for the opportunities you give us to butt heads with each other and to be in groups with each other and to love each other and to enjoy each other's company and to go bowling together and to read books together and banter afterwards. And God, there's all these, being a life group, God, and the opportunities you give us to mentor into kids' lives and into, even our lives as adults. We still need people to challenge us. Thank you, God, for giving us that as a part of our church. I'm so grateful, Lord, that almost 50 years ago, people from another church saw the need for us to be here, to make a place where we can be salt and light to Hudsonville and to Jenison and to Granville and to all the surrounding area. God, make us your people. Make it obvious to the world that we are different because of you, and we're different because of your love. We love you so much, God. We give you our lives today like we do every morning, and we give them to you this week until we get to meet again as a family and celebrate your amazing love. You loved us so much that you sent Jesus, that we should not perish, but that we could have eternal life. God, what a gift. We're so glad and so grateful, and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.